There are moments in life that do not pass. They stay, not because they were loud or long or filled with fire, because something within was awakened. Intimacy is not unforgettable because of what happens on the body, because of what it does to the soul. And in the quiet hours of a man's solitude, he remembers not skin, but stillness, not shape, but sensation, not the thrill, but the truth. What makes sex unforgettable for a man? Stay with this question, not for the answer, but for what the answer awakens in you. For what lies ahead is not about flesh, but about awareness, about reclaiming the art of being present in a world that rushes through pleasure like a storm tearing through a forest. There is a kind of silence that speaks louder than words. It is the silence found not in absence, but in complete presence. When a man enters intimacy with his body, but not his breath, he leaves only with an impression on his skin, not his soul. But when he enters it with full awareness, like one walking barefoot upon sacred ground, each moment becomes indelible. The ordinary is transformed. Presence is not just attention. It is the merging of awareness and stillness. It is when the mind, the heart, and the body arrive in the same place at the same time. In such a state, the experience ceases to be fragmented. 1,000 thoughts do not pull him away. His touch carries depth. His gaze lingers not to consume, but to FC. The breath becomes a guide, not a reflex. In this sacred stillness, something is carved into the memory, not by intensity, but by meaning. There is an old tale passed down through quiet courtyards in the East. A student once asked his master, What is the difference between pleasure and fulfillment? The master took him to a stream and asked him to drink. The student cupped the water in his hands and sipped eagerly. This, said the master, is pleasure. Quick, satisfying, gone in a moment. Then the master sat down beside the stream and closed his eyes. Minutes passed. His breath slowed. He neither drank nor moved. And this, he said softly, is fulfillment when you become the stream, not just the thirst. So it is with intimacy. The man who rushes to quench his desire leaves with only fleeting satisfaction. But the one who becomes part of the moment, who feels the breath of the other as his own, who holds silence as reverently as sound, he is changed. The moment becomes etched into his being. In daily life, this presence can be glimpsed in the simplest of acts. A mother brushing her child's hair slowly, without distraction. A gardener pruning each branch with both care and calm. A musician playing not for applause, but for the sound that echoes in his own soul. These acts are not grand, but they are unforgettable because they are fully lived. So too in the realm of love, when presence replaces performance, connection replaces conquest. The body will forget what the mind once clung to. The heart will remember how it felt. And it is the depth of that feeling, unrushed, unforced, unmarred by distraction, that determines what stays. As the Taoist sage Zhuangzi once wrote, the perfect man employs his mind as a mirror. It grasps nothing. It refuses nothing. It receives, but does not keep. When a man enters love as a mirror, reflecting, receiving, not gripping, he sees clearly, he feels deeply. And what he experiences, he does not need to chase again, because it is already within him. Presence does not need to be dramatic. It is not always slow motion or sacred lighting. It is simple. It is honest. It is the quiet discipline of a not leaving, not through the door, nor through thought. It is the art of being still in action, of hearing the silence beneath every sound, of recognizing that the most sacred touch begins not with hands, but with intention. Second truth flows gently from the first, like a river meeting the roots of a tree. Presence is the doorway. What lies beyond that doorway is emotional safety. For even a man who can enter slowly and consciously will never unfold his full self unless he feels safe to be seen. Many men walk through life carrying silent armor. Not metal, not visible, but heavy nonetheless. It is made of expectations, past wounds, childhood echoes, and the quiet fear of being misunderstood. In intimacy, this armor does not fall easily. The world has not often taught men to be soft, only to perform, to prove, to persevere. When he meets a space where he is not asked to be more than what he already is, when he feels he can breathe without needing to impress or hide, something ancient stirs within him. He uncoils, he opens, and in that opening, something unforgettable is born. There is a parable from the mountains of old China. A wanderer found himself in the middle of a fierce storm. Cold, wet, and weary, he saw a small hut with light flickering from within. He knocked, expecting rejection. But an old woman opened the door. She did not ask where he came from, what he brought, or how long he would stay. She simply offered him dry clothes and warm tea. That night, as the wind howled outside, the wanderer did not sleep because of comfort alone. He slept because, for the first time in many moons, he felt safe. Intimacy is the same. A man may enter many doors, but he never forgets the one where he didn't have to explain his silence, where his body could tremble and his heart could speak without needing translation, where nothing was asked of him, and yet everything within him was welcomed. We see this not only in relationships, but in nature. A flower does not bloom in soil that demands it. Opens when the ground is soft, when the sun is warm but not scorching, when the air is quiet. So too, a man does not reveal his sacred self under pressure. He blooms only where he is not judged for his pace, his pain, or his poetry. Practice of self-mastery, emotional safety is not a gift one asks for. It is a space one creates and one learns to his honor. Whether with a lover or in solitude, the ability to hold space without correction, without interruption, is a form of deep love. Not loud, not poetic, just deeply present, deeply permitting. And once safety has been felt even briefly, the memory of it does not vanish. It becomes a compass. A quiet yearning to return to the Thais, where he did not have to be a version of himself, but could simply be. In this way, emotional safety becomes the hidden root of unforgettable connection. As the Buddhist monk Ajahn Chah once said, "You see, the mind is like a still forest pool. If you go and look at it, you can see many beautiful things. But if you throw in a stone, the water becomes cloudy. Be still, let the mind be clear. Only then will you see the truth. A man who feels safe will let his thoughts settle. And when the mind becomes still, the heart speaks truths it had long hidden. There is power in giving space without questions, in holding someone not just with arms, but with calmness, to become the hut in the storm, the quiet field where the weary rest. Not because they were chaste, but because they were welcomed. This is not romanticism. It is rare, ancient truth as these two truths unfold. The power of presence and the sanctuary of emotional safety, they begin to intertwine. One feeds the other. Presence creates the space for safety. Safety deepens the possibility of presence. And when both are held, a third begins to arise, a connection that transcends time, body, and memory. This is not about desire alone. It is about remembrance. What makes something unforgettable is not how high it climbs, but how deeply it rests within us. The most powerful moments in life are often not the ones that shouted. They are the ones that they listened. So let us return to the breath. Let us remember the simplicity of we are fully here. Let us create spaces where no armor is needed and no masks are worn. Let us slow down, not to fall behind, but to catch up with the soul. For when presence meets peace, when desire meets safety, when breath meets stillness, something more than memory is created. Something timeless, something sacred, something unforgettable. In the quiet folds of life, Where breath slows and thoughts settle like dust in a still room, there is a truth waiting to be seen. Sensation on its own is fleeting. It flickers, ignites, and fades. Stillness, inner stillness, holds the power to turn passing touch into timeless remembrance. When a man seeks pleasure without presence, what he receives is surface, a spark, a thrill, a momentary escape. But when stillness becomes the ground from which intimacy arises, something different occurs. Each sensation sinks deeper, not because it is louder, but because it echoes in a space that is not cluttered by thought. In stillness, even the faintest touch becomes meaningful. The breath, the heartbeat, the trembling of fingers, these become sacred rhythms. Stillness does not mean absence of movement. It is the absence of resistance. It is the quiet acceptance of now. In the realm of love, it is the pause before a kiss, the exhale after eye contact, the moment when time no longer pushes forward, but dissolves into presence. In these spaces, the body begins to speak a language older than words. There is a story from the Shaolin tradition. A young disciple once asked the master, "How can I feel more deeply? How can I experience more from life?" The master gave him a bowl and filled it with hot tea. "Now carry this to the temple," he said, without spilling a single drop. The boy moved slowly, carefully, aware of every step. Afterward, the master smiled. "You did not need more from the tea," he said. "You needed more of yourself in the moment." What made the tea richer was not more sugar, but more stillness. In daily life, we can see this reflected in the smallest of acts. A cook preparing food with undivided attention. A sculptor carving with reverence, not haste. A father sitting beside his child without checking the time. In these moments, action is slowed by awareness. And it is in that slowing that we feel more. So too in intimacy, the man who rushes toward climax like one running from silence does not remember the journey, only the end. But the man who listens, pauses, breathes, he feels the entirety of the moment, not as a performance, but as presence. Nature teaches this too. A river does not roar endlessly. There are pools where the current slows. In those pools, life gathers. Fish rest. Plants grow. The surface becomes a mirror. In stillness, life deepens. And so, the man who learns to be still within sensation, who lets the moment linger without leaping forward, will remember the connection, not just the contact. The philosopher Lao Tzu once wrote, "Do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself?" In the rush to feel, to grasp, to conquer, we often muddy the water. But when we allow stillness to lead, what we experience is not just deeper, it is more true. To cultivate such stillness is not easy. It requires the discipline to slow desire, the courage to sit in silence, the humility to listen with the body and not the mind. When it is practiced, even briefly, intimacy changes. It is no longer something done. It becomes something received. Let us walk gently now from the path of stillness into a deeper forest, the forest of energy. For just as the mind must be still to hear, the body must be quiet to feel the invisible. A man may forget the conversation. He may forget the taste, the room, the exact order of moments. He will not forget how he felt, because while the mind is often busy with memory, the body remembers energy. And it is in the dance of unseen forces that true connection is made. Two bodies can meet, but never touch. Two souls can meet and never part. What makes a moment unforgettable is not always visible. It is the exchange that happens beneath the surface, the pulse behind the pulse, the breath beneath the breath. There is a tale told in the temples of the mountain regions. A traveler arrived at a village where people lived in harmony and peace, despite speaking different languages. Curious, he asked an elder how they understood one another. The elder smiled and said, We do not speak with the mouth. We speak with the spirit. And then he added, the body is a mask. Energy is the true face. So it is in intimacy. Words may be kind, but if the energy is restless, it is felt. Touch may be skilled, but if the heart is closed, it leaves no mark. A man may perform every act perfectly, yet leave the moment emptier than before, because what was exchanged was not authentic. When the energy is clean, present, open, even the slightest touch can move mountains. Within, we see this in the way animals sense intention. A horse will not be calmed by a nervous hand. A cat will not rest near a person who hides tension. But when calm, loving energy is present, trust arises naturally. So too in human connection, energy does not lie. In the path of self-awareness, one learns that managing energy is not about control, but alignment. When thought, breath, and intention are aligned, the energy we emit becomes clear. And it is clarity that creates resonance. Resonance is what makes a man remember, not just that he was touched, but that he was met on a level deeper than skin. In nature, this is mirrored in the harmony of ecosystems. A forest that is balanced in energy attracts life. The soil is rich, the air still, the sound soft, nothing is forced, yet everything thrives. In the same way, a connection rooted in honest energy requires no performance, it simply is. And because it is rare, it becomes unforgettable. Japanese Zen teacher Jan once wrote, "To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened by all things." When energy flows without ego, when we stop performing and start being, we enter a state where the self dissolves, and what remains is pure exchange. This is not to say that one must be perfect, or enlightened, or constantly calm. But awareness matters, intention matters. When the heart is sincere, when the breath is steady, when the presence is real, the energy between two people speaks more clearly than any words ever could. To live this way is to remember that the most lasting parts of life are often the most invisible. A song that lingers not because of its notes, its silence. A room that feels safe not because of its furniture, but its energy. A person remembered not for what they did, but for how they made us feel unseen, but undeniable. And so we arrive gently at the place where these two teachings merge. Ness prepares the soil. Energy plants the seed. Together, they create connection that goes beyond touch, beyond time, beyond memory. When we slow enough to feel and clear enough to be felt, we offer something rare, a moment that does not end when the body separates. A connection that lingers, like a scent carried on the wind, like the hush of dawn remembered long after the sun has risen. Take a breath now, not to reach forward, but to return. To sit in the center of your being and feel what moves beneath the surface. Let your energy soften. Let your stillness deepen. And know that in doing so, you prepare a place, not just to touch another, but to first reach them. For in the world of fleeting pleasures, it is stillness that gives sensation meaning. It is energy that ensures the body is not merely touched, but truly have known. There is a silence a man carries, not always by choice, often by habit. It is the silence of lessons taught in shadows, the ones that set strength means withholding, control means masculinity, and softness is a kind of failure. And so, he walks the world armored, admired perhaps, but unseen. He becomes a fortress built from effort, achievement, and restraint. Yet there remains a place within him, small, trembling, quiet, where he longs not to conquer, but to be cradled. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is not the crumbling of a wall, but the opening of a gate. When a man finds a space where he can put down his armor without losing his dignity, he begins to transform. He begins to remember who he is without the weight of proving himself. This is why he does not forget the one with whom he was able to be soft, not simply emotionally expressive, but undefended. There is a story told in a mountain monastery of a young monk who carried water each day in a heavy iron pail. One day, the handle broke, and the monk, ashamed, knelt before the master with the broken bucket. The master gently placed the monk's hands in his own and said, "Today, you have brought the most precious water of all yourself without the burden." The monk wept for the first time in years, not because of pain, but because he had been allowed to be seen in his wholeness, not just in his service. Such moments do not arrive often. When a man can cry without fear, tremble without shame, speak without filter. This is not merely intimacy. This is healing. For in that sacred space, he is not asked to perform. He is not celebrated for strength, but embraced in his surrender. This kind of connection is found not in the peaks of passion, but in the valleys of trust. It is in the gentle holding after silence, the gaze that sees beyond muscle and mastery, the voice that does not correct, only invites. In such presence, he no longer needs to explain who he is. He simply, and what a gift it is, to be enough, just as one is, stripped of effort, bathed in acceptance. In the realm of nature, we see this reflected in the changing seasons. The tree does not hide its bare branches in winter. It does not resist the shedding of its leaves. It trusts the cycle. It trusts that to be exposed is not to be empty. And in that surrender, gathers the strength to bloom again. So, too, when a man is allowed to be emotionally bare, he gathers power from his own openness. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." But true mastery does not mean suppression. It means integration. Hold both the strength and the softness, the rage and the sorrow, the fire and the tears. And in the rare place where this is allowed, a man becomes unforgettable, not because of what he gave, but because of what he trusted someone to hold. In everyday life, this trust may look simple. A partner listening without rushing to fix. A friend who allows silence to be shared, not filled. A lover who sees the tiredness behind the laughter and does not demand more. These gestures, quiet and small, become anchors in the soul, not because they change everything, but because they change something of deep. To be soft in a world that teaches you to be hard is an act of quiet rebellion. It is also the beginning of freedom. And so, as the heart grows more open, it reaches toward a different understanding of desire, one that is not impulsive, but disciplined, one that does not consume, but cherishes. Discipline is often misunderstood as coldness or restriction, but in truth, discipline is a sacred container. It is the fire ring around passion, the banks that guide the river of longing, the pause that deepens the taste. Desire without discipline is like wind without form. It scatters, but disciplined desire becomes meaningful. It does not rush. It listens. It waits. And in that waiting, it gains clarity. The rarest fruits are not picked in haste. They are allowed to ripen, nurtured by time and care. So too, desire becomes unforgettable when it is earned, not merely taken. There is an old parable from the Zen tradition. A warrior, weary from battle, asked the temple keeper for the secret to inner peace. Keeper handed him a bowl of ink and asked him to write the word desera with perfect clarity. The warrior did, proud of his control. Then the keeper said, "Now write it again, but with your other hand." The warrior struggled, the ink smudged. The keeper said, "The second is more true. It was harder, it was slower, but it came with humility." The warrior finally understood. Desire mastered is not rigid, it is aware. In the natural world, this wisdom is found in the tides. The ocean does not crash without rhythm. The moon guides it. Time shapes it. If the tide rushed without pattern, it would destroy. But because it flows with discipline, it nourishes. Likewise, a man whose desire is shaped by awareness becomes not overwhelming, but magnetic. His intention is steady. His passion is imposed. A relevant truth comes from Confucian philosophy. To govern oneself is the highest form of rule. In intimacy, governance is not repression. It is sacred timing. It is choosing to wait not out of fear, but out of reverence. What is hurried is easily forgotten. What is chosen slowly becomes sacred. In real life, we see this in those who do not reach too soon. In the one who touches not to possess, but to honor. In the one who looks into your eyes, not because they want something, but because they want to see you. Discipline here is not absence. It is the fullness of presence without the urgency of grasping. The man who learns this way of being remembers not the frequency of pleasure, but the depth of connection. His memory holds the way he was drawn slowly, like water pulled by gravity, inevitable, but not rushed. And the one who offered such connection becomes part of his inner landscape. Not a moment, but a marker. As desire is tempered by discipline, and vulnerability replaces performance, something extraordinary happens. The man who once sought escape through pleasure begins to return home through it. He no longer searches for more, but sinks into what is, and in that sinking, in that sacred stillness, he is changed. This is the art of unforgettable connection. It is not loud. It is not fast. It is not adorned with effort. It is made of breath, of stillness, of energy, of truth. It is made of soft places where the hard parts of a man can rest, of disciplined desire that chooses presence over urgency, of shared silences that speak louder than any touch. Take a breath now, if you will. Let the words settle, not in your mind, but in the body. Listen not for answers, but for echoes. The heart remembers what the mind forgets. The body holds what time cannot erase. And the spirit, quiet and ever still, knows what is sacred. A man does not forget the one who saw him clearly, touched him slowly, and held him safely. Because in those moments he was not becoming something. He was simply allowed to be. That is the deepest memory of all. So what makes sex unforgettable for a man? Not the fire, but the ash that remains. Trace of truth that lingers when the body rests and the soul still stirs. It is not the body he remembers. It is who he was allowed to be. In that one moment, he was not chasing pleasure. He was coming home to himself. And this is why you must reflect not only on what you offer, but how. Not only on the act, but on the energy that holds it. For in the end, the greatest intimacy is not in being touched, but in being truly known. Sit with this, breathe with this, and perhaps one day you will not just be remembered, you will be unforgettable.